And a very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. It's a Monday edition, so it's a special edition, and we are having a busy week, so we've decided to add an extra day today, an extra day this week. Of course, this week the debates on the budget began today in Parliament. As we know, the budget was read last week, and the debates began today and continue throughout the week. And we will be paying some attention to the budget this week and running into next week. I want to welcome everyone down to Politics 101 today, Monday evening edition. Want to thank my operator, Andrew Weeks, who does a lot of the hard work behind the scenes. And I want to thank him for going the extra mile. This is a team effort. Good evening. Good evening. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. You know, sometimes we have to take time out from the politics and to do things, spend time with the family, catch up on some personal things and so forth. Sometimes the politics could be so overwhelming and it's good to get away. So welcome, I see GT Road Girl, who is one of our regulars here on the show. Welcome down to Politics 101. Our guest tonight is going to be Rickford Burke, and we'll be talking to Rickford about a number of things, including the continued harassment that he is experiencing at the hands of the PPP. Rickford will join us later. And we're going to try to see if we can stitch in a couple of calls from you. So get ready. So please do share the link, because the more you share it, the more people would know that Politics 101 is on. Share it to all the pages that you frequent and so forth, so that people can join the program. So good evening everyone. And as I said, it's the debate on the budget began today. We know Manzo Walton Desir and Ganesh Mahai Paul, they presented today from the opposition benches, and Amanzo made the argument that $89 billion will be wasted from the 2022 budget. That's really interesting there. Amanza's contribution, that the amount of money that is being wasted in the budget, predicting that $89 billion of the $552 billion national budget would be wasted. Ms. Desir urged the government to redirect the money to the poor and the vulnerable, to public servants, pensioners, etc. She explained that the PPP has set aside $218 billion for capital expenditure. That is almost half of the budget. That is an increase of 109%. for capital expenditure. The issue that arises, Ms. Desir said, is one of capacity, contending that neither the government nor the private sector has the capacity to execute capital projects to the magnitude the opposition. The opposition MP said the situation is further compounded by the ongoing pandemic, which has severely affected the global supply chain. She says the IMF, in reporting on Guyana's public investment management assessment, states that Guyana has an estimated efficiency gap of 41%, which means that out of the $218 billion that is allocated for capital expenditure, 89 of that will be wasted. So she's basing our assessment on the capacity of the government. And if what the IMF is saying, that the efficiency gap is 41%, so she's arguing that 41% of that $218 billion is likely to be wasted. That is extremely interesting. She says that 36 billion of that money could have been used to increase the wages of private sector, public sector workers. More money could have been given to the university, etc. The tax threshold could have been raised to $100,000 rather than the $75,000 there. So Ms. Desir is making the interesting argument there that a lot of that money would be wasted. She says wasted. You know, if you know anything about the PPP, it could be more than just waste. It would be grafted. That money, a lot of that money could find itself in the pockets of PPP cronies. You see? So a very interesting observation there by Amanza. And then Ganesh Mahaipal, he also spoke on the budget today, and he revealed that the government has slashed the budget for all the regions that were won by the coalition. It has not slashed the budget for those regions that the PPP won. It slashed the budget for those regions that are controlled by the PPP. So for example, Region 1, a PPP control region, the allocation to the Regional Democratic Council under the line item 6211 increased from 45 million in 2021 to 53 million in 2022. So Region 1, they have increased by $8 million. For Region 2, another region controlled by the PPP, the increase is from 16 million to 20 million. For Region 3, another PPP control region, the increase was from 12 million to 14 million. Let's go to Region 4, which is the most populated region in the country, with almost half of the country's population. It was allocated a decrease from last year. Last year, Region 4 got 21 million. This year, it has gotten 18 million. So when we talk about discrimination and the inequitable distribution of resources, you have it there. You have it there. You have it there. 3 regions controlled by the PPP, they raise the allocation, and the most populous region, it's not controlled by the PPP, they decrease. And you know, this is what we're talking about here. It's the barefacedness of the PPP when it comes to the allocation of resources. They're not even trying to hide it. Let me give you those figures again. Thanks to MP Ganesh Mahaipal, made the observation. Region 1, PPP control region, the increase is by 8 million, 45 million to 53 million. Region 2, this is the Essequibo, controlled by the PPP, increased from 16 million to 20 million. Region 3, this is West Demerara, East Essequibo. Another PPP region, control region, increased 12 million to 14 million. Region 4, decrease from 21 million to 18 million. So region 4 not only gets increase from 21 million to 18 million, is that region 1 is allocated more money than region 4. Region 1 is allocated 53 million. Region 4, 18 million. Region 2, 20 million. Region 4, 18 million. Region 3, 14 million. Region 4, 18 million. So not only have they decreased region 4, but they have allocated more money for their regions than region 4. And region 4 is the most populous region. I have not seen the figures here for region 6 yet, and region 5. Those are other regions that are controlled by the PPP. But we see the barefacedness there. We see the barefacedness there. Please share the link. We're going to bring in Rickford Burke just now in a couple of minutes. I'm allowing you all to get settled. Before we bring in Mr. Burke, share the link. And so immediately as we begin to look at the budget, we are seeing the discrimination, the inequitable distribution of resources. And the people always say, well, you know, you opposition people, you all like to talk about the government discrimination. Where is the evidence? Where is the data? They like to ask for the data, you know? The data. And the data is right there in the budget. The data is right there in the budget. In the budget. Region 1 is allocated more money than Region 4. Region 2 is allocated more money than Region 4. And these regions together, they don't have the same population as Region 4. And what is worse, Region 4, there was a decrease from last year. Whereas the other regions, Region 1, 2, and 3, have seen an increase. And this is the kind of governance that we're dealing with. And if you look at it from an ethnic standpoint, you go to a place like Region 2 or Region 3, one ethnic group is more populous in those regions, and Region 4, the other ethnic group is populous. So if you look at it from their region, there's discrimination, but when you now look at the indicators, you look at the ethnic indicators, we see a decrease. And not only a decrease in terms of the allocation, much less is allocated. You see, in an ethnic society, when you are allocating resources or when you are talking about policies, there's what is called the ethnic impact. What is going to be the ethnic impact of a policy? So here we have the government. We're sampling 3 regions. Region 1, which is predominantly Amerindian. Region 2, predominantly Indian Guyanese. Region 3, predominantly Indian Guyanese. Region 4. So we have 2 regions, predominantly Indian Guyanese. 1 region, predominantly African Guyanese. And the other region, predominantly Amerindian. And we see the region that is predominantly African Guyanese gets the least money allocated to it, not just in the real numbers, but per capita. If you divide what is allocated to Region 4 by the Region 4 population, it gets less than the other regions. So even though Region 3 gets, I think, 14 million, and Region 4 gets 18 million, when you look at it per capita, Region 3 gets more. It gets less in terms of the real numbers, 14 million. But when you look at the population, which is far less than Region 4, Region 3 ends up per capita getting more than Region 4. Getting more than Region 4. Now, this is the kind of advantage taking that we always talk about. The advantage taking that we talk about. So please, I'm asking you to share the link so that we are able to let people understand what is happening as far as the allocation of resources are concerned. Now, the budget is extremely important. The budget is extremely important because the budget tells us how much the government intends to spend and how much it intends to spend on what policy, which area, etc., etc. And so if you want to get a sense of where the government's biases are, biases in terms of population, biases in terms of policies, then you take a peep into the budget. And already, as we have seen here, the budget begins to tell us this sad story of unequal distribution of resources. My goodness, the government is not even hiding. It's not even hiding. It's doing it. It's doing it in front of our faces. Sisters and brothers, you know, sometimes we talk about, let's get action, and we talk too much. And as we like to say, it's important for us to talk, because in talking, we're able to tell you what is going on, so that when it's time to take action, our action would be justified. The sisters and brothers are there in Parliament. At the end of the day, the government is going to use its majority to push that budget through. But what our presence in the National Assembly allows us to expose what is hidden in that budget. Imagine if we didn't have parliamentarians in there. Now, we could have gone through the budget outside of Parliament and tell you what's in the budget. That's true. But the presence in Parliament means that you use the platform of the Parliament in order to expose what the government is doing in the budget, the ethnic biases, the the political biases in the budget. And we're able to come on to programs like this and to talk about the biases in the budget. So that when we move, we know that we are moving from a position of being informed. So welcome everybody, welcome down to Politics 101 tonight. It's a special Monday night edition. We're gonna pay attention to the budget as we go forward. Tomorrow night, Aubrey Norton is going to be here, the leader of the PNC, and he, and perhaps his team that will likely come with him. I don't know who else will be coming on, but I know Aubrey Norton is going to be on. And they're going to be talking about the PNC's perspective on the budget. And then on Wednesday, the WPA is going to be here to give us their perspective on the budget. Professor Clive Thomas, WPA elder and leading economist, along with Takumo Ogunse and Kidaki Amsterdam. That will be the WPA team that will be here on Wednesday to talk about the budget. And then on Thursday, the AFC will be coming to give their view on the budget. We'll have Kemraj Ramjatan, Kathy Hughes, and Patterson, David Patterson. So tomorrow, Tuesday, is going to be the PNC. Their team is going to be led by their leader, Aubrey Norton. Wednesday, the WPA. Their team will be led by Professor Clive Thomas. And then on Thursday, we are going to have the AFC, whose team is going to be led by Kemraj Ramjatan, the leader of the party. And so we're going to get their take on the budget next week. We're going to have the TUC, the trade unions. We're going to have the TUC and the other trade unions that make up the TUC. They will come to give us their take on the budget. And then we're going to have some private sector people who is going to come on to give us their take on the budget. And then we're going to wind down next week with some analysis from our usual team, Dr. Henry Jeffrey and others who are going to come on. So we'll spend the next 2 weeks talking about the budget. We'll set aside Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for that. And then we'll do Monday edition to catch up with the other matters. So that's our timetable for this week. Tomorrow, PNC, Wednesday, WPA, Thursday, AFC, to give us their take on the budget. Let us know what the government intends to do with our money, how they intend to steal the money, to siphon off the money, and so forth, for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But for tonight, we're going to be talking with Mr. Rickford Burke. Rickford, welcome to Politics 101.
Thank you for having me. I was enjoying the introduction.
Thank you very much. And Rickford, we are having you on tonight to talk particularly about the government continued harassment of you. We know that there's a preoccupation with all of what takes place on this social media platform. The government seems to be deathly afraid of what's happening on this platform, but they've singled you out for special attention. We know they went after Sherrod and they pulled him in for calling somebody a false name. I was on a program in Dominica yesterday, and we were talking about the way in which governments are overreach, and I told them about Sherrod's arrest and your harassment, and they could not believe what they were hearing in the rest of the Caribbean. You know, sometimes we spend a lot of time speaking to our people, and sometimes we don't speak to our sisters and brothers in the rest of the Caribbean and the diaspora and American lawmakers, and so on, for them to know what's happening in the country. You know, if we speak to ourselves, we know what's going on, that's important. But we need to let the world know what's happening, because we knew that in 2020, the world pronounced an election when they were only informed, or they were informed only by PPP's narrative, and we were found wanting. And I'm suggesting that one of the government, the APNU and the AFC did not do very much of during its tenure, and that is to keep the corridors of power in the United States informed about the overreach of the PPP, and both in opposition and in government. And I think they have it out for you, like I said, because you are hitting them in a place that they don't want to be hit. Do you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. Well, they're most upset with the fact that, obsessed with the fact that I have access to the United States government officials, whether it's in the Biden administration or members of Congress or the state or city government. I think that's their most, they have the most contempt for the fact that I have that access. And so what they have decided at a strategy session they had at Office of the President that Barry Jagdeo chaired was that they should sully me. They've launched a campaign to attack my character,
No, don't go
criminalize
too
me.
fast. Don't go too fast. Don't go too fast. We can be get into that. So you have access to people in the corridors of power, and you are providing them with information on what's happening in Guyana.
Yes.
Explain for our audience, first of all, how that information will affect in a positive way what the work of the opposition in Guyana. Because, you know, we have to constantly explain to our people, not just what we do, but the effect of what we do. The direct effect, the indirect effect, the potential effect. We have to explain that, because sometimes people think that struggle, understandably so, is when you are really hitting the government directly. And we don't pay attention to when you're hitting them indirectly. So I want you to explain for our audience how the kind of work that you are doing in filtering information about the government to the corridors of power in the US, how that is impacting positively on the struggle, the anti-authoritarian, anti-dictatorship, and anti-government struggle in Guyana.
Well, we have been, our aim is to create awareness of the situation in Guyana. We have been in touch with Juan Gonzalez, who is the National Security Director for the President on the National Security Council. So he works in the White House. We have been in touch with the Secretary of State. We've been in touch with the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, which includes Guyana, and our members of Congress on the Foreign Relations Committee, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives. We've been in touch with our governor. We've been in touch with the City Council, the New York State Legislature. And that is to provide awareness, provide information, give empirical evidence, show them what is happening in Guyana. The effect of that is that people have begun to speak out. You had several members of Congress, and it's not our work alone, it's work of other organizations and other individuals as well. But you had a member of Congress from New Jersey, Albino Sirius. I know he's retiring. He has said that the wealth of Guyana belongs to all of the people, and the government must make sure equitable governance. Congressman Hank Johnson from Georgia has said the same thing. You had Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from New York, who went further, who condemned the Trump administration's intervention in Guyana and said Guyanese must resolve the last election issues, not the United States bullying the country. And of course, she rebuked the ambassador. You have Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Both him and Yvette Clarke have very large chunks of Guyanese in their district. Each district has about 790,000 people. And of those, a very large percent is Guyanese. And so they represent the interests of their constituents. So you have Congressman Jeffries that represents downtown Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, parts of Crown Heights, East New York, Canarsie, Midwood, Coney Island, and that area. I mean, it's a large, large chunk of Guyanese who have been bombarding him with complaints about what is happening in Guyana, racism, PUP corruption. I, of course, work along very closely with the senators and the Congress members from New York. And of course, I'm a consultant and a strategist with the Democratic Party. So I have access to some of these people. And we have been passing information, sending evidence, everything that comes across our desk, we pass it on to our members of Congress. And we saw what happened when we had the anti-PPP racism rally in New York. You had several members of the state legislature attended and spoke out. You had several city council members, 3 city council members spoke out, 4 members of the New York state legislatures, 2 members of Congress. And you have the chairman of the Democratic caucus in Congress calling on the PUP to stop racism, discrimination, intolerance, racial intolerance, and call for the ambassador to be fired because of what her activities in Guyana. So it has been, our work has had a large impact on the attitude of the United States towards elected officials and government officials towards Guyana. And because of that, there's now a flurry of activities between the Guyana's national security personnel, government personnel, and the United States trying to undermine the work that we have done. But we've continually been engaged with US officials, and we have begun to see some changes, and you will see changes in the US policy towards Guyana.
Tell us what changes that we have begun to see.
Well, we've had the Secretary of State, who is the number 3 person in the White House, having a very stern conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, talking about concerns they have about racism and corruption. You had, of course, Member of Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, condemning in very harsh terms the racism. What we will see now is the White House becoming engaged. I'm aware that several members of Congress have written to the White House on Guyana. I'm not at liberty to disclose the content of that. I'm sure the government the White House and the State Department is monitoring what's happening with this bulletin that they have issued for me. And it's not only for me as the head of a United States organization. I know that there's much concern within the legislature and the US government that as soon as the PUP came to power, they asked the Ethnic Relations Commission to falsely charge us, including yourself and Mark Benchcop, and to file papers for us to be extradited, as if they think this is Bora Nancy, right? Bora Nancy's story. But it shows that the government is not democratic. It shows that the government is a dictatorship, and the government is racist, and they want to go after Afro-Guyanese that speak out against them. And so I think in the coming months, you'll see very harsh conversations between the United States and Guyana. I don't think the ambassador currently that is there, that a Trump holdover, I think she sympathized with the racist tendencies and of the PPP government. Of course, she's from the Trump administration. She's not been speaking out against racism, speaking out against injustice against Afro-Guyanese, and the fact that the PPP is trying to use the resources of the country to enrich themselves and their own ethnic supporters. No US ambassador in any country would tolerate that. She does. She's in bed with them. And I think more members of Congress would become engaged in a focus on the ambassador and what she's doing there.
But isn't the ambassador a career U.S. Foreign Service official? Is
The
she?
ambassador is partisan. Regardless of how of her designation, whether she is a career diplomat or a political appointee, she demonstrated that she supported, she worked for, and she upheld and executed the racist foreign policy of the Trump administration in Guyana. She has been in bed with the PPP. To me, she countenances their racism and their anti-Black positions and policies. If she did not, she would have spoken out against it. She herself said that she wanted to make sure that the rule of law in Guyana was upheld. And she said that repeatedly during the recount. She was only concerned that the rule of law be upheld so as to promote the PPP. And once they got into power, she's turned a blind eye to their corruption, their racism, and their atrocities, and their attempt to establish an ethnocratic regime in Guyana.
And of course, that's Rickford Burke here on Special Edition of Politics 101 tonight, giving his take on the behavior of the U.S. ambassador. Rickford, ambassadors generally have not been in the business of speaking out on the internal affairs of countries that they are the guest of, because in many regards, a foreign ambassador is the guest of the country that they're in. They don't usually speak out. Why is it that you are saying? And let me take it. You're making the point that the ambassador was very forceful in speaking out during the period of the impasse last year. And you're saying that by that logic, she should speak out on what happened after then, right? That's what you're saying.
Well, the ambassador is supposed to represent the values of the United States. She is the representative of the President of the United States. The President of the United States has spoken out against racism, corruption, and intolerance around the world, and said that his government will take a harsh stance against it. In that regard, I think it's her responsibility to convey the values and the policies of the United States. That's number one. Number two, she has demonstrated partisanship. She has been, to me, in bed with the PPP, in bed with the PPP friends in the private sector. Do you see her going to anything that ACTA does? No. Do you see her going to anything that the other civil society organizations that are populated with Afro-Guyanese? No. Do you see her going to anything from the coalition? No. She recently met the ambassadors, ABC ambassadors have been meeting with the new leader of the PNC. I think that's because of the pressure that we've put on them to stop demonstrating partisanship. Now, during the recount, she was all over the place. At one point in time, I thought she was the president of Guyana. At other times, people would have been confusing her for the chairman of GCOM. She was very partisan. She did not come down the middle and ask for democratic values to be upheld. She went further than that. And she was a spokesperson and a snake oil salesperson for the PPP. When the PPP put out its statement saying that the APNU AFC government violated the Constitution by not calling elections 90 days after the no confidence motion, she actually put out that statement too, along with the other ambassadors. When the members of Congress who went on a fact-finding mission just before the elections, Congressman Albino Cerise from the Foreign Relations Committee, Congressman Greg Meeks from the Foreign Relations Committee, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who's the chair of the Caribbean Caucus in Congress. And they confronted her on that statement. She said that she did not say that. At least that's what was reported to us by the members of Congress. She said it. She told them it was the social media posts and advocates that said that. That was a lie. She said it in a written statement with her colleague ABC ambassadors. She also went to the home of an individual who is a PPP supporter, allegedly, and who is under investigation by the FBI, by the Justice Department, by Customs and Border Patrol for, you know what? Funding international terrorism, smuggling drugs, smuggling gold and money laundering. You had the United States ambassador at his home allegedly having dinner. When Enrico Wolford confronted her on that, she lied again. And she said she was there for a bathroom break. That was a lie. She was there for allegedly for dinner. And she also said that if she had it to do, if she could have done it, if she has it to do again, she will do the same thing. That's disrespectful to the values of the United States, and it's disrespectful to the people of Guyana who look up to the United States to set the tone for the rest of the world with regard to holding people accountable for their actions.
And there we have it there, Rickford Burke expressing his views on the activities of the ambassador of the United States to Guyana. Rickford, of course, is president of the organization CGID, and I assume that his views reflect the thinking of that organization. Rickford, let's move on to the harassment that the government has been, the government of Guyana has been targeting you with. We know that they put out a wanted bulletin for you. What has happened since then?
Nothing. I've never been contacted by the police. I don't think that I've done nothing to warrant a bulletin. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I have been a law-abiding citizen in Guyana. Wherever I go, I've never been arrested for a crime, charged with a crime, convicted of a crime. This is nothing about the crime in Guyana. This is trying to silence me. I don't know if you saw a report in one of the PPP media outlets that said even though I was a wanted bulletin was put out for me, I continue to be outspoken. One would think that after such a bulletin that I would change my ways. That was the objective of the bulletin. I think it was Guyana Daily News or something like that, which allegedly is run by a member of the PP cabinet and a remigrant, Guyana Daily News. That's what it says. They boldly said it. Although a wanted bulletin was issued for me, I continue to be vocal and to attack the government. And one would think that after the bulletin, that I would have changed my ways. I'm not sure changed my ways from what? From what? Exposing racism, talking about corruption, pointing out the fact that the PPP wants to impose a racist, ethnocratic apartheid state in Guyana. No. They have been planning to kill me, I heard. Even the Attorney General was engaged in, allegedly, in some sort of conspiracy to have me killed in New York. And the words that he used, based on the report that went to the FBI, is that this guy Burke will make me lose the government. We gotta get rid of.
Yeah, but let's move on to the most recent accusations that you are making against the government.
Most recently, we had a delegation sometime last year that visited at the invitation of the Black Entrepreneurs Association of Guyana, the the BEA. And so you had legislators from a state senator from Georgia, a state representative from the state of Georgia, a state assembly member from two assembly members from North Carolina, some advocates, civil rights advocates, and some business people who accepted an invitation to visit the country from the Black Entrepreneurs Association. I was advised that when they went to a meeting in the office of the president, which was attended by the installed president, Ali Barajagdeo, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Works, Wanejil, Onish Wadran, the Minister of Tourism, and the National Security Advisor, Jerry Gavaya. When they were in that meeting, two representatives of the government asked if they cannot find a way to get me arrested in the United States because I am creating all sorts of problems and I am lying to members of Congress and I am being racist and I'm dividing the country.
Hold on, don't go too fast. You're saying that the delegation came here, went and meet with the government.
Yes, they came to explore business opportunities.
Yeah, right. And they met with the government, and the government ask them whether there are ways to arrest you, harass you.
Arrest me, have me criminally arrested. Yes, that's what the government asked them.
And how did you know that? How you got that information?
Well, from the time the meeting ended, I received about 20 phone calls about the meeting.
From
both
members
from
of the delegation or from members of the business community who were in that meeting? You see, you're making charges. You're making these charges against the government. And I'm sure the government will say, no, we didn't do that.
I wish they would do that because there's a tape recording of the conversation.
Okay, well,
so I wish they would say that, right?
That's what I'm asking. So
in addition to that,
you have a tape recording.
No, I'm not acknowledging that I have it. I'm just saying that there is one, is my understanding. I'm not going to disclose whether I have it or not.
All right, okay, all right.
In addition to that, you asked who told me. All of the phone calls came from Guyana. All of the phone calls came from Guyana. Now, I was not aware initially of the extent of the discussion. Now, what has happened is that somebody reported that conversation here in the United States. Now, you know, the government of Guyana has to understand that politicians in the United States, are held to a very high ethical and legal standard. Now, I guess because of the nature of that conversation, and that I immediately mentioned it, I immediately tweeted that the government was so obsessed with me that they spent 20 minutes discussing me at this meeting where politicians and business persons from the United States were to discuss business opportunities in Guyana. The same evening after the meeting, I tweeted that. Now, I guess because I did that, somebody officially reported that that took place. And that report found its way into the United States government. And so I was informed by the United States government about the conversation officially. So I'm not sure who did, how it was, but I was told that there was this attempt to engage in a criminal conspiracy with members of a delegation that included state legislatures. And
you were officially contacted by the government of the United States.
I would say whether I was officially contacted or not, I was informed.
You were informed
by government sources, right?
By government sources. So it was not official, but it was government sources that informed you. Formally,
I'm not going to characterize it. I'm just saying that I was officially informed that this report existed and that this matter might warrant law enforcement's attention.
Wow, 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 wow. Rickford Burke here tonight making some very serious charges against the government of Guyana. Charges of harassment.
And Dr. Hanks, somebody from the government has acknowledged to me that the conversation took place. What I want the EBA to do, the BEA to do, is disassociate themselves from what the government attempted to do in that meeting. Because how can anybody trust any organization going into a meeting with the government and dismissing such a heinous attempt to engage in either something unethical or something criminal? I think it's a very serious issue. And the Black Entrepreneurs Association should disassociate themselves from what the government attempted to do. And this is all an obsession with me. I don't understand how they can presume what I say to members of Congress. That if you look at their writing, if you look at their instructions to I'm not going to say instructions, I take that back. If you look at what their supporters in Queens have been saying, all of them are saying, I am misleading members of Congress. Now, members of Congress are big, intelligent people with dozens of staff. They check everything before they speak. They investigate everything. So for them to be so simplistic to say that I am misleading members of Congress because they know that I know these members of Congress and that I'm in touch with them is so ludicrous and so disrespectful and offensive to the members of Congress that they think that they know what I am saying to members of Congress. And so that's what their obsession is. And so they feel that I should, as a result of that, be criminalized. If you listen to the rhetoric coming from their supporters and the PPP, everything, somebody should be arrested, Burke should be arrested, he should be deported. I'm not sure if they understand what deportation is and who is deported, but they say these things, they're sycophants. Why? Because they want people to stop exposing their racism, stop exposing their corruption, stop telling the world about what is happening in Guyana. The two Guyanas, one Guyana for the PPP and their electing supporters, and one for everybody else.
Wow. Rickford Burke making some very serious charges against officials of the Guyanese government. What we know for a fact is that the Guyana government put out a wanted bulletin for Rickford Burke.
And Dr. Hines, if I could also mention, when the issue about the Attorney General coming here and the revelation that he was engaged in some conversation where he advocated for me to be harmed, they denied it, right?
Yeah.
Even Barra Jacques, who wasn't here, he knows nothing about the case, but he jumped involved. Well, I can confirm now that I have been informed by the police that in their evidence gathering, there is a recording. Now, I don't know what the recording says, but I know for sure that there is some form of recording. I don't know from whom or by whom or what was said, but there's a recording in the hands of the police.
Right. So what Mr. Burke has said here tonight, I think any government of a country should respond and to see and to prove Mr. Burke wrong. If the government doesn't do that, then it leaves the case wide open. These are serious charges. And these charges, of course, warrant looking into, especially since the government put out that wanted bulletin for Mr. Burke. The government showed its hand that it has an interest in silencing Rickford Burke. And now Burke is making these accusations. The government should say whether Burke is lying or not. That's my view. Mr. Burke has come on here, he has made his case, and now it's for the government to say whether Burke is lying or not, and to more than say whether Burke is lying, but to prove Burke not to be telling the truth. You see?
And Dr. Hines?
Yes.
I wish they would do that, because since this issue came up, I have spoken to one of the elected officials from the United States here who was in that meeting.
But you've said a lot to convince the audience that you have the evidence. Welcome to Politics 101 tonight, special Monday night edition. Our special guest is Rickford Burke, political activist, operating for the most part in the diaspora, in particular the New York area. He has been a thorn in the side of the government, and even before the PPP was the government, thorn in the side of the PPP. Because I rather suspect they are very antsy about Burke's contacts within the corridors of power in New York State, and by extension, the federal government of the United States of America. Welcome to Politics 101. We're going to open the phones shortly for you to talk with Rickford. Rickford, let's pivot a little bit away from harassment. You've heard the budget. I suppose you've gotten time to peruse it. What is your take on that budget, and how does it reinforce or not reinforce the view by the opposition forces that this government intends to use budgetary allocations to advance its discriminatory form of governance?
Well, first you say they're attempting to the harassment. I don't even see it as harassment. I just see it as them making themselves fools in the international community. They're attempting to harass me. I'm unbothered by it. With regard to the budget, I think the budget is for the private sector. The budget is the private sector being rewarded for their efforts to get the PUP elected. You said it best. And also the budget confirms their discriminatory policies. They're bold in the way they discriminate. They don't care. And that's why I harken back to the ABC ambassadors, because when you have a government such as the PUP, it is the international community that has to keep them in check. When they use the police to abuse citizens, when they use the police to perpetuate themselves in office, when they use the police to perpetuate ethnic supremacy, it is the international community's responsibility, obligation to rein them in, including CARICOM, which as far as I'm concerned has been a failure. But you mentioned the budget. Now, I was making notes when you were speaking. You had a budget, Region 1. How can Region 1 that has, what, 13,000 people? How can Region 1 have a bigger budget than Region 4 that has almost 400,000 people? And you pointed out that Region 4's budget was slashed by $3 million, from $21 million to $18 million. It's an absurdity. And I happen to think that the elected officials in Region 4 should take the government to court. We have to start trying different strategies to hold this government accountable for their discriminatory practices. Dr. Hines, take them to court, take them all the way to the CCJ. Now, you would remember that the regional chairman for Region 4 kept condemning the regional executive officer, who is the brother of Donald Gadaraj, who's the PPP minister that was in charge of the death squads. He refused to consult with the Regional Democratic Council, the elected representatives of the people. He created a budget with the government, the PP government. No input from the regional chairman, no input from the regional vice chairman, no input from the Regional Democratic Council, members of the Regional Democratic Council. He did not include the priorities that the regional chairman and his council have for the region in this budget. What are we doing as a country? Could you imagine the federal government refusing to give funding to New York State or California? That's what the PP government is doing. And that's why we continue to argue that they're engaged in a fraudulent transfer of the resources of the state to themselves and their supporters. Because here's what they're doing. They're determining the projects in the region. And those projects in the regions are all, especially Region 4, are all in East Indian PPP areas. That's one. Number two, you yourself pointed out that what they're doing with the budget has an ethnic impact. Because Region 1, which has 13,000 people, they voted for the PPP. So they're being rewarded with a bigger budget than the largest region in the country. Region 4 not only houses the capital city, but Region 4 has the most businesses in the country. It's most populous. So you have businesses paying taxes, people paying taxes, and all of the money in taxes that they're paying are diverted to PPP ethnic areas and regions. How could that be right in a multi-ethnic society? In addition to that, they will now engage in capital projects in these regions. Amanza spoke about the 41% inefficiency rate with regard to the execution of these projects. All of that money is going to waste, fraud, and abuse. Half of it procurement fraud. You mentioned Dr. Thomas. It's Dr. Thomas who found that within 2 years, 2020 and 2022, sorry, 2012, sorry, 2010 to 2012, about $500 million US was stolen from Guyana through different forms of fraud. His report also said between 2001 and 2009, almost $1 billion US, 940 billion US were either stolen or siphoned off through corruption under the PPP. So we didn't have oil then. So if you look at those two figures, it's close to 1.5 billion US dollars in half of the time that the PPP spent in power. They stole from the people of Guyana. And all of this money is going into their pockets or into their ethnic areas. So they're transferring the wealth of Guyana to themselves and to their ethnic supporters.
Rickford Burke here weighing in on the budget. Amanza Walton Desir, in our contribution today, observed that $218 billion, almost half of the budget, is allocated for capital projects. This is a 109% increase. What that means is that the allocation for capital project has doubled. And she's saying the inefficiency rate that cited by the IMF is 41% inefficiency rate. And she calculates 41% of the $218 billion, $89 billion. And so she is making the argument that potentially $89 billion from the budget would either be wasted, she said it wasted, given that inefficiency rate that has been alluded there to, thanks to the IMF. And I'm making the point that I don't think it will be just wasted.
Exactly.
It would be siphoned off into the pocket. This capital project means that people have to bid or supposed to be bidding for these contracts. And we saw what happened with contracts under the last budget. So almost half of the budget, $218 million, is allocated to an area through which the thieving occurs. And Amanza is saying $9 billion could be stolen just even before we begin everything based on what the IMF is saying about the inefficiency rate. And I rather suspect when they said inefficiency, they also mean corruption, be siphoned off through corrupt practices. Damning revelations in Parliament. And then, as we have been saying, let me give you those numbers again. Region 1, the allocation for Region 1 has been raised from 45 million to 53 million. Region 2 raised from 16 million to 20 million. Region 3 raised from 12 million to 14 million. Region 4 decreased from 21 million to 18 million. race in the regions they control. And that is another source of corruption, because those are monies that are given to the regional administration to spend. That doesn't prevent the federal government, or the central government.
Central government, yeah.
Central government, not federal. The central government from spending money in those districts per capita. If you calculate the money that is allocated to region 1, 2, and 3 per capita, they have much more money than region 4. So they don't just have money in terms of the real numbers, but also when you calculate the numbers by the population. And that's a lot of money that is allocated to the region, a lot more than region 4. Region 4 is being slashed, not only slashed from 21 to 18, the most populous region. If you take the population of region 1, 2, and 3, it then adds up to region 4.
And we don't know the numbers, Dr. Hines. We don't know the numbers in region 6 and region 5, region 8 and region 9, which they control.
5 and 6 yet.
But Dr. Hines, what you have done there is actually provided the empirical evidence for racism.
Yes.
Because
yes.
if you and they have been denying it. If you look at these regions, let's look at the number Amanda's quoted, which is $100-something billion for infrastructure, and she's saying 89 billion is going to waste based on the calculations of not Amanda Walton Desir, of the IMF, who studied this issue and researched it. And then we have Dr. Clive Thomas's numbers based on his investigation and research to back that up. Now, if $89 billion is going to waste for fraud, and this money is only allocated to PPP regions, because remember, none of the money for these big projects going to any region that is controlled by the PPP. Sorry, PNC, APNU AFC coalition.
Right.
So most of these projects are going to either go to PPP regions or PPP communities in the regions controlled by the APNU AFC coalition. It is hard evidence of racism. It is the PPP using the state money only to develop the regions, towns, and villages that they have support in. We cannot allow this to happen as a country.
Yeah. And that is what we mean by the institutional racism.
Exactly.
We're not talking about somebody calling somebody the N-word. We're talking here about a government using the power of the purse to distribute resources in an inequitable way, an unequal
discriminatory way.
That is what we're talking about, and that is racism. Racism is about your prejudices, which is not, your prejudice is not racism. Your prejudice, all of us have prejudices. A lot of women like to say they like tall men, which means that they have prejudice against short men, right? And a lot of men like to say they like red bone, fair-skinned women as opposed. So they have prejudice against dark-skinned women. Your prejudice is not racism. If Indian people say they don't like Black people, that whatever the reasons, that's prejudice. Racism is when you're able to use the power that you have
to discriminate.
To take your prejudices and turn them into policies and laws, so that you have an Indian-dominated government that is now using the power of the purse strings to starve regions of the country that are dominated by the ethnic group that did not vote for them, to starve them of resources. punish them while rewarding those regions that voted for them and that are dominated by people of one ethnic group. That's racism. That's the difference between prejudice and racism. And what you are doing there is that you are pitting Amerindians in Region 1 by throwing more resources at them than you throw at Region 4. You're pitting Amerindians against Africans while you stand in the middle and laughing. There's a lot that is going on in this budget. And that is why we are getting what you call behind the numbers. Anybody comes off the road, comes off from Mars or Pluto, and they look at the number, the amount of money for Region 4, Region 3, they will say, oh, nice, the government is spending money on Region 3. Oh, wonderful. And they look at the money that is allocated for Region 2, wonderful. And they look at the money that's allocated to Region 4, wonderful. The government is spending money in the regions. Who live in these regions?
Exactly.
You see why they don't like me on these programs? They tell the people, yes, Lincoln Lewis says economic genocide. Thank you, Yonette. God bless Lincoln. Said it's economic genocide. You see, they tell people, oh, those boys, all they do day and the night is that they're saying, oh, the PPP is racist.
And we're seeking attention.
Yes.
We're seeking attention.
Right. But I want them to tune in on these programs and understand the seriousness that's happening here. Our guest tonight is the one and only Rickford Burke. We're gonna go to the phones now. We're gonna open the phone lines, Mr. Operator. Please put the number for the people to call, and we're gonna spend the rest of the program for you to call in and to give your views on the harassment. I know Rickford is being modest. We all do. But they've singled him out for harassment. That's the truth of the matter. And we're weighing in on the budget tomorrow night. Tomorrow night on this program, we're going to have Aubrey Norton on to give the PNC's perspective on the budget. And then Wednesday night, Professor Clive Thomas, along with Takumo Ogunse and Kidaki Amsterdam, are going to be here to give the WPA's take on the budget. And then on Thursday, we're going to have Cameron Ramjatan, Kathy Hughes, and David Patterson to give the AFC take on the budget. So this week, we are focusing on the budget, and we're going to get the three opposition parties to give their take on the budget. Tomorrow night is the PNC. Leader Aubrey Norton. Wednesday night, WPA. Professor Clive Thomas leading that delegation. And on Thursday night, the AFC. Mr. Operator, please put the number up on the screen so that the people can call in to talk to Rickford Burke. We have a few minutes left, and we want to hear the views of the people. Rickford, is there anything that is bothering you that you want to talk about?
Absolutely not. One thing that is bothersome actually is the government's use of the police force to silence dissent. I look at the absolute abuse of them going after a comedian, the guy Mudwater, or whatever it is. Allegedly, we don't know if the person they have arrested is the actual person behind this cartoon character, Mudwater. But the fact that the government could go and break into somebody's home and seize their computer for satire, for being a comedy, for providing comedy, I think it's so disgraceful. And the fact that their ethnic supporters in the media are silent, it shows that our society is doomed. Our society is doomed. I was talking to somebody today who pointed out to me the atrocity of the fact that you had an East Indian doctor from the Georgetown Public Hospital who is under investigation for alleged arson at the hospital. And the East Indian operators of the press are suppressing his name. But when buildings are burnt in Georgetown, these same people join with the government to charge that Black Lives Matter activists in New York burned down some building in Georgetown. And that Mark Benchcap and Rickford Burke and all these activists, just because they want to pin you with a crime, they want to set you up. They want to do exactly what the government was asking politicians in the United States to do. And that's why that matter was reported. And they're quiet. You have a medical doctor who's an East Indian. In addition to that, the man was fired today for sexual harassment or molestation or something to that effect, sexual misconduct at the hospital. And they won't call in his name. They ain't calling his name. So I don't know. We don't have press freedom in Guyana. But in addition to the lack of press freedom, and let me define what I mean by press freedom, because the lack of press freedom only apply to Black journalists. If Enrico Wilford or Gordon Mosley or some of these Black journalists say something harsh about the government, they ban them, they go in case like in Mark Benchcap case, seize equipment, mash down his place, break up his studio, whatever it is. But they are also joining with their ethnic supporters in the media, Newsroom, iNews, Starbrook News, some of these racist television stations or television stations that project a racist agenda. They allow them free rein. As long as y'all attack Rickford Burke, Enrico Wilford, David Hines, Roger, Sherrod Duncan, the opposition, Aubrey Norton, that's fine. I would point out as well that when the government issued the bulletin, I issued a response. All of them ran with it. They even make sure they sent it abroad because they wanted to create a splash on the internet that Rickford Burke is a criminal. So when any members of Congress or the Biden administration and so on Google him, all they're going to see is Rickford Burke is a criminal. They don't even know that I'm above that nonsense, but they don't care. But when I issued my response, not one of them carry it. You look at them when the opposition leader, Mr. Harman, puts out his press statement, not one of them carry it. All they want to do is to project East Indian supremacy. And when we talk about it, they say that we're racist. But we're responding to their racism because we don't have the ability to be racist. We don't have political power. And it is not within our DNA to be racist. That's a PPP thing.
Yes, there we have it. Rickford Burke on tonight, giving his unvarnished views on the issues of the day. Of course, it's the budget debates in the National Assembly have begun. Today, Amanza Walton Desir addressed the budget from the opposition side.
Star performance.
Star performance, yes. And Danish Mahai Paul.
Star performance.
Also presented from the opposition benches. And we are going to be covering the budget, given the perspectives of the different parties, the various parties in the opposition. The PNC tomorrow night, Aubrey Norton is going to be on. Wednesday night. If the operator can put up those flyers. Tomorrow night, Aubrey Norton. Wednesday night, Professor Thomas leading the WPA's delegation. And on Thursday night, the AFC. Next week, we are going to have the trade unions come on and to give their take on the budget. Then we're going to have some private sector types from our side of the aisle giving their take on the budget. And then we'll wrap it up with the political analysts. So we have a packed 2 weeks, and we intend to give full coverage to this budget because we feel that the budget tells us what we have known all along, and the government has now confirmed what we have suspected all along. And what is happening is that we are strengthening our case. You know, when I called on people to undermine the government, they made a big deal about it. I, of course, didn't care. I knew what I was saying. But they have now given good reason why you should undermine this government. Good reason why you should undermine.
They might issue wanted, but it didn't for you, Dr. Hines.
Yeah. I know. Tonight, it's a bittersweet night for me. Yesterday, I lost a very good friend, one of my closest friends, one of my biggest supporters, one of the biggest supporters of this program, Mr. Ronald Willibus, Buxtonian, passed away yesterday. And we are all mourning his loss. A giant of a human being. As I said, it's my close friend. It's now sinking in that my friend is gone. My friend is gone at the very young age of 69. We have to look at our own mortality. As we farewell my brother Ronald Willibus for those Buxtonians who were on. Our condolences to the villagers. Ronald was a member of the 1st of August movement of Buxton. He was a member of SAGE, a founding member of SAGE. He's gone. He's gone back to the ancestors. And we'll be burying him this weekend. This weekend.
I'm so sorry to hear that, and convey my condolences to his relatives and friends. May he sleep in peace.
Yes, Ronald Willibus, as we say, gone too soon. But gone too soon, but we have got to press on. As the poet Martin Carter says, death must not find us thinking that we die. Too soon, the banner draped for you. I would prefer a banner in the wind, not bound so tightly in a scarlet fold. If it must be that we speak no more with you, nor smile no more with you, let me take patience and calm. He's gone. But tonight, we're continuing with the business, and Mr. Willibus would want us to continue to doing what we are doing. When I decided to start the show and I was looking for a name, Ronald was one of the first persons that I ran the name by. He said, yeah, right name, politics 101. And so on. My friend, they used to call himself me myself and Mr. Morris Wilson, the owner of the gas station in Buxton, PNC member. The three of us were very close friends, and we would be hanging out at the gas station, where they call our headquarters. And whenever I'm in the country, the three of us would be there, and we'll be arguing politics.
Parliament. Yeah,
Yes,
in
yes,
Parliament.
yes. And
I'm so sorry about that. So sorry
yeah,
for his loss.
Ronald, was very. He didn't have very much time for foolishness. Foolish politicians. He was farewell, my friend. Rickford, closing thoughts.
Well, as you said, the budget reveals exactly the nature and values of the People's Progressive Party government. It's a sobering moment when you think of the fact that Guyana is now an oil-producing country, and the PPP is denying half of the population the benefits of the resources from Guyana's patrimony, natural patrimony. And I'm wondering where this country is going to head. It's untenable that this could continue to happen. We cannot have a country where regions that the PPP doesn't win, towns and localities, municipalities, NDCs are not getting the resources they need to provide services to people. I want to know why the PPP thinks that the country belongs to them. I want to know why they think that the oil money must be spent only in their communities. I want to know why there is such deep hatred in that party for Black people. Why there's such deep hatred in that party for Amerindians who don't support them, or East Indians that don't support them. Something must be deeply flawed in the thinking of the leadership and support base of that party, that they can rejoice in the fact that they're starving regions and towns and villages that have Black people in them for funds. And we cannot allow it to happen. And Dr. Hines, they will have to kill me for me to stop talking. Because I know that's what they have been saying and have been feeding to their sycophants and their supporters. Rickford Burke should be killed. It's not going to be an easy thing. And if it happens, there's going to be serious consequences. But I want to know what it is that they think that they have inherited Guyana, that slaves. And why it is that diplomats and members of the private sector commission and even the Black members of their government can sit there and watch them tread on people that don't support them based on ethnicity and race. Something must be deeply flawed and rotten in the PPP. And we in CGID, Dr. Hines, and the diaspora here, we are prepared to not allow it to happen. We are prepared to give them hell. We are prepared to ensure that there's not an apartheid state in Guyana. We are not going to allow the PPP to drive Guyana back into despotic failed state because of racism. So that's what people must think about. Every one of the people watching here tonight must contemplate on the fact, do we allow the PPP to take the billions and billions of dollars from Guyana's oil and spend it on themselves, their families, and their ethnic supporters? I say no. Guyana belongs to all of us, and we want equitable governance. We want fair governance. We want justice. We want just governance. And we want to make sure that everybody, PPP supporters, WPA supporters, AFC supporters, coalition supporters, PNC supporters, everybody must benefit from the resources of Guyana and from the natural patrimony.
Thank you very much.
We must all work to make that happen.
Thank you very much, dear Rickford, and
Thanks for having me. Good night
always
to
a
you.
pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks
And
for having me.
tomorrow night, we're going to have Aubrey Norton on, the PNC's view of the budget. The following night, Wednesday night, Professor Thomas and the WPA delegation. And then on Thursday night, the AFC will be coming on to give their view. So we're signing off tonight, and Marlene, who's on tonight, Marlene Thomas, Haslington, she's on, and a very close friend of Ronald, and I was introduced to her by Ronald. We would go there, and it is very difficult. It is very difficult when you lose a friend, a close friend like that, a really genuine human being. And if I'm a little bit subdued tonight, it is because of that. And I shall pass the condolences on to the family. The condolences from Politics 101 onto the family. We came in peace here tonight, and we leave in peace. Until tomorrow night, be good to yourself and stay strong, because we need all of our faculties and all of the bodies at our disposal to continue this struggle for liberation. Good night.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.